Justin Tafa, Austen Lane. Have they fought before? Yep. 29 seconds in, Austen Lane lands 2 body kicks and a punch, and then he rakes the eye of Justin Tafa. Tafa can't continue. It was a very long layoff. Listen, Dan Mergliotta did all he could do. The doctor that looked just like Bob Odenkirk said no, he can't continue. He said he can't see. So ultimately, Matt, we get a rematch of this fight. And gosh darn it, we talked a lot about it in the original time. So let's talk about Justin Tafa and Austen Lane. Do you like Tim Sylvia? Do you like Heath Herring? Do you like Big Nog? If you consider this matchup, Matt, this is the most 2008 heavyweight fight that you're going to get in 2023. Coming up this weekend, we have the bad man, Justin Tafa, taking on former NFL player. And it's real. He's a real NFL player. Austen Lane, a man who was drafted in the 5th round by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he had a cup of coffee with the Detroit Lions at the end of his career. But last weekend, Zach Paunga, they said he played for the Houston Texans. Didn't play a snap for them. Austen Lane really started games in the NFL, and if you consider it, I mean, players to come out of Murray State. Quincy Williams, also drafted by the Jaguars. Not a lot of big-time fighters, or at least NFL players out of Murray State.
Didn't John Morant go there?
But a guy in Austen Lane that ran a 4.58 40. So wild for Austen Lane. Parlayed that into an MMA career. A lot of early finishes. Fought Greg Hardy on Contender Series. Lost. Picked up some more wins after losing his fight off Contender Series. And then you had Lane coming in, getting that big win his last time out, and ultimately making his way into the UFC. Beat Richard Jacoby. We did a big video ahead of that on our Contender Series show, so let's throw it on over to a clip from that show.
And the comment was out there of how good Austen Lane looked on the scales. This guy's 6'6" at heavyweight. He has an 80-inch reach, and Richard Jacoby, 6'4", 75-inch reach.
I
don't know, Matt.
Nothing you're saying is wrong, but I'm not sold on Austen Lane either.
No,
Austen Lane, I vividly remember for being super hyped up before he fought Greg Hardy. They were like, hey, this is the top-ranked Southern United States heavyweight. That's what they were calling him going into that show. It was like one of those baseball stats where they're like, this guy hasn't given up a run in the 4th of May in 6 years. But for Austen Lane, he was really hyped up on his first entry into Contender Series because he is that big, intimidating-looking heavyweight. When he can fight on his terms under his rhythm, he is really good. But the problem is, guys get on the inside of his reach very easily, and he's not a durable guy once they do. He's not someone who can then, make the fight really ugly, fight his way to the outside, circle off, and then get his distance back. If you make it ugly, there's a very good chance that one of your shots can reach his chin at a certain point. And if it does, up until this point in his career, he hasn't really shown the best susceptibility to getting hit by shots. Like, I remember the Frank Tate fight right after the Greg Hardy fight, too. They were like, wow, Austen Lane, he's getting back on the train. And what happened in that matchup? He also gets stopped. So for Lane, I think the skills are there, but there's also a lot of those pitfalls, too, that the classic heavyweight can fall into when they believe in their own power a little too much.
And this fight's really weird. Like, again, if you didn't know, Austen Lane was on season 2 of Dana White's Contender Series 2018, gets finished by Greg Hardy in 57 seconds. And I see it in the comments, Matt, from CT710 saying Lane is so long, but he does this thing where he leans in and throws combos and is going to get caught. And Dan Goldstein says Lane was catching butterflies after Hardy hit him instead of defending the next shot. One shot will boop him, not as the favorite. And CT also finishing up saying if he was fighting a wrestler, it'd be free contract for his opponent. The weird thing about this one, I think Austen Lane, very good striker when it's on his own terms, and he hasn't fought the best level competition either. Like, you consider it, his last 2 wins are really big. He finishes Juan Adams in the Fury FC title fight in the 4th round. You like to see that durability. He beats Eric Lunsford his last time out to defend the belt. That was back in February. His other losses, you said Frank Tate, one to Greg Hardy, one to Vernon Lewis, who's been good with LFA, who's been good with Bellator as well.
So Jacoby, being an accredited striker out of Brazil, low volume, high power, gets the takedown against Austen Lane that gets reversed, and then it's Lane landing the ground and pound. Now, this is an awkward fight because Tafa, Junior Tafa, was supposed to welcome Austen Lane into the UFC at UFC 284. Lane is out due to a bicep injury. I won't show it, but you can go to his Instagram and see the muscle popping out. If you look at it for Lane, now he gets this opportunity against Justin Tafa, not Junior Tafa. And Matt, this is where I'm going to lead it off to you. I will admit when I'm wrong, and I will admit when I'm wrong often. Out of Justin Tafa fights in the UFC,
I think people have watched our videos.
I'm 2-4 in picking Justin Tafa fights. You're 3-3. We've been bad at picking Justin Tafa fights.
Because he just fights in one of those 50-50 kind of styles. You know, when you
2008 heavyweight style?
When you rely on the power like a guy like Justin Tafa, it's going to leave a lot of holes in your game because you just rely on that one massive outlier. Chris Davis is who I bring up all the time. Now, Chris Davis might have been on Adderall when he hit a lot of home runs, but Davis was a guy who relied a lot on his power. And then, when everything else started to fade away and he just had the power, there wasn't really enough left for him to maintain his spot at kind of the major league level.
The two Chris's, Chris Davis and
Baltimore Oriole Chris Davis.
Baltimore Oriole Chris Davis, not Crush Davis, or Crush Davis if you want, but Chris Carter as well that played for Houston.
But this
leads the league in homers, and a few years later, he's out.
Well, like, Kyle Schwarber is probably going to be playing for, like, a regular, like, house league here any day now, because Kyle Schwarber's a negative WAR player, but hits a ton of home runs. My point is, with Justin Tafa, he is one of these outliers who relies on his outlier strength, which is good. You want a guy to do what gets him to the dance, but when Tafa does rush forward recklessly, we saw that in his fight against Yorgan De Castro, right? De Castro closed his eyes and threw a right hand, and it was still enough to knock out Tafa. What I will say about Austen Lane, though, is I know they bring it up a lot in the Greg Hardy fight, but no matter what your thoughts of Greg Hardy was, he was a really good athlete, right? Like, you don't make it to the NFL without being a really good athlete. Austen Lane at 6'6", I do think has plus athleticism. He's a big guy who uses his speed and uses his strengths quite well, and he moves well for being such a big frame at the heavyweight division.
He kicks well, and he closes distance really well.
But the thing that I do worry about with Lane is he's a guy who stays for the receipt, to quote Teddy Atlas, when he throws a lot of his boxing combinations. That's how Greg Hardy was able to catch him. When he throws a lot of those bigger straight shots, there is a detriment to having, massive arms and being a really long-rangey striker. When you miss on some of those rangier strikes, you can get caught by counter shots. Now, I don't know if Tafa's going to have the head movement to really be able to duck out of some of those initial shots and make him pay for them, but this is one of those fights where I think it's pretty easy to lay out a game plan for how both guys could win.
I disagree with you on Tafa in two respects, because again, I'm 2-4 in picking his fight, so it's not good, but the breakdown of a Tafa fight, yeah, he overreached in that fight that he had at Marvel Stadium in his UFC debut against Yorgan De Castro. The other two losses, a really close decision to Carlos Felipe and a close decision to Jared Van Deren. Justin Tafa is one of those guys, you see it on screen, 266 his last time out. He came in at 267 against Harry Hunsuck at Hunsucker, and he ended up getting the knockout win. You look at a guy like Justin Tafa, and the thing that he does really well is undervalued in MMA. Now, Dan Tom got me onto this, and now all of a sudden it was like a switch in my brain. Justin Tafa, in all 6 of his UFC fights, 64 of his 180 significant strikes landed are body shots. And in the 2 losses that he has that aren't the knockout loss against Yorgan De Castro, 32 shots and 28 shots to the body against Felipe and Van Deren.
That's because they just put their heads together and threw boxing combinations.
32 of 74 strikes and 28 of 77. Justin Tafa lands a heavy preponderance of body shots, and against a guy like Austen Lane, who's going to be headhunting, we'll see how that plays out, because if you're ducking, if you're making any sudden movements to go to the body, Lane can catch you on the way in with those kicks, with those really long hooks that he has. Now, who has a speed advantage? I have a tough time saying it in this one.
Well, it depends on the range, really. If Lane can stay on the outside, he's just going to be able to the one who can pepper Tafa a little bit easier. But on the inside, I do think Tafa, even though he throws those big looping shots, they're going to be enough to land.
It'll be interesting to see what we get nonetheless. And the big thing when I look at a guy like Austen Lane, you watch a guy that throws so much fury, so much power at you, but he's not like one of the upper echelon guys at heavyweight. He's like one of them, but he's not like a Francis Ngannou or a Derek Lewis, somebody that's going to plant their feet and throw that big power shot. Lane's going to throw it, but he might be off balance on his front foot. He might be off balance on his back foot. And if he misses, you're out of position, you get countered, you get knocked out. If you land, you look like Jairzinho Rosenstrike, and then you make your way all the way up to the top 5. So Austen Lane, it could be a very interesting career path. He makes his debut at 35, so a little long in the tooth, but it is still heavyweight. And if you look at it for Justin Tafa, an accredited striker nonetheless, and he is the younger man in the matchup. We'll see how the weigh-ins make out for both guys, because one guy's missed the heavyweight limit. So in the original fight, Austen Lane plus 160, Justin Tafa minus 190, 29 seconds of action. The body kicks, they were aplenty from Austen Lane, and as the commentary noted, Lane needs to be able to keep the distance, land the kicks. Tafa needs to be able to close the distance. Tafa gained 50 points. He's more of a favorite now than he ever was, which is wild. But when you do consider a fight like this, we both had Lane in the original video. Who do you have now?
This is an oddly close fight. I don't know why either guys justified their fact to be a favorite in the UFC, because yes, Tafa is the more known commodity at the UFC level, but Austen Lane, and they're going to bring it up a lot in the broadcast, you guys are going to roll your eyes when I say it now, guy's a good athlete. I know he's 35 years old, but for a heavyweight, he does move very well on the feet, and he does land good straight shots. I can't believe I'm switching my pick based on, 29-second fight, like you said. But I do think Lane is going to have a difficult time in that medium to close range in this matchup. And if Tafa excels anywhere, it's once he's able to get, forehead to forehead, chest to chest, he can land really effective strikes from that position. So I'm going to go with Justin Tafa ever so slightly. But it's unranked heavyweight MMA, guys. Anybody can win if they land one shot.
1,065 total Topology votes, 83% with Tafa, 89% by knockout. For the 17% that I've laid, 70% by knockout. I still have Austen Lane. I like the kicks on the outside that he was able to throw early, but he landed 3 strikes to none and then an illegal eye poke. So we'll see how the mind games play out. A fight like that happened one time in a UFC main event. They rematched them on a main card. It was Jeremy Stephens against Yair Rodriguez, and Yair Rodriguez was able to get the win in that one. He was the eye poker in the first match. Matt, we're split on the pick in this one. A big-time fight in the next one. We have the 10th-ranked flyweight Manel Kape taking on incredibly short-notice UFC debutant Felipe Dos Santos, a.k.a. Lipe Detona. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.